the Levite's concubine. In the days when Israel had no king, a Levite traveled to Bethlehem to bring back his concubine who had left him. On their journey home to the hill country of Ephraim, they stopped in the Benjamite city of Gibeah, where an old man invited them to stay in his home. While they were eating, a mob surrounded the house, demanding that the male guest be handed over for violent humiliation. The host pleaded with them, and, in desperation, offered his own daughter and the Levite's concubine instead. When they refused, the Levite forced his concubine outside. She was violated through the night and collapsed at the doorway by morning. Finding her unresponsive, the Levite placed her on his donkey and returned home. There, he cut her body into 12 pieces and sent one to each tribe of Israel as a call for war against the Benjamin tribe. The tribes gathered, and when Benjamin refused to surrender the guilty men, civil war nearly wiped them out. Judges 19 leaves her nameless and without justice, a silent victim of Israel's darkest hours. The death of King Herod Agrippa. Judea was ruled by the grandson of Herod the Great, Herod Agrippa I, who fiercely opposed the early church. He even ordered the execution of the Apostle James. When the coastal cities of Tyre and Sidon angered him in a trade dispute, they sought to make peace as they were dependent on his territory for food. They won the favor of Blastus, the king's personal assistant, who arranged a public hearing. On the appointed day, Herod appeared in gleaming royal robes and addressed the crowd from his throne. Eager to please him and secure their supplies, they shouted, "This is the voice of a god, not a man." Instead of rejecting this praise, Herod welcomed it. Acts 12:20-23 says that at that moment, an angel of the Lord struck him down for refusing to give glory to God. The most disturbing aspect of this story is that Herod didn't die instantly. His body was consumed from within by worms, causing days of unbearable pain. Historian Josephus confirms the account, describing 5 days of agony before his death. The same crowd that called him a god watched helplessly as he died, a king undone by pride in full view of his people. Tamar and Amnon. In 2 Samuel 13, Amnon, the eldest son of King David, became obsessed with his half-sister Tamar, the sister of Absalom. His cousin Jonadab devised a scheme. Amnon would pretend to be ill and ask David to send Tamar to prepare food in his room. The plan worked. Tamar came willingly, kneading dough and baking bread before him. But when she brought the food to his bed, he grabbed her and demanded she sleep with him. Tamar pleaded, begging him not to commit such a disgrace, and even suggesting he could ask the king for her hand. He refused, overpowered her, and forced himself on her. After he was done, Amnon's obsession instantly turned to hatred, and he had her thrown out. Tamar tore her robe, put ashes on her head, and wept publicly in shame. David was furious when he heard it, but took no action. Her brother Absalom sheltered Tamar in his home, biding his time. 2 years later, he finally murdered Amnon in revenge. The Witch of Endor. On the eve of battle with the Philistines, King Saul faced silence from God. No dreams, no prophets, no answers from the sacred lots. In desperation, he turned to what he had outlawed, necromancy. In this story, in 1 Samuel 28, Saul traveled at night in disguise to Endor, where a woman secretly practiced the forbidden art. He asked her to summon the prophet Samuel, who had died years earlier. As she began the ritual, she cried out as she saw an old man in a robe rising from the earth. Saul couldn't see him, but he heard Samuel's voice. The message was devastating. The voice said that by the next day, Saul and his sons would be dead, and Israel would fall. The prophecy came true. The battle claimed his sons, and Saul ended his life on the field. Whether it was truly Samuel or another spirit remains a mystery. But his last act was crossing the very line God had drawn, and it marked the end of his reign in a shocking and brutal way. Balaam's talking donkey. In Numbers 22, Balaam was a well-known diviner in Mesopotamia, famous for his blessings and curses. When the Israelites camped near Moab, King Balak feared they would destroy his land, so he sent messengers with gold to ask Balaam to curse them. God allowed Balaam to go, but only to speak his words. The diviner set out on his donkey, but God saw his heart. Even though Balaam claimed obedience, he was drawn to Balak's rewards and honor, hoping to profit from the mission. To confront him, God sent an angel with a drawn sword to block the road. Balaam couldn't see the angel, but his donkey could. 3 times the animal tried to avoid the danger, swerving into a field, crushing Balaam's foot against a wall, then lying down completely. Each time, Balaam beat it angrily. Then God allowed the donkey to open its mouth, and the animal asked why he was striking it. Only then were Balaam's eyes opened to see the angel ready to kill him, and he realized his donkey had been saving his life. The man known for spiritual insight had been blinded by greed until God used the humblest creature to stop him. God sends a lying spirit. King Ahab of Israel planned to retake Ramoth-Gilead from Syria and convinced King Jehoshaphat of Judah to join him. Before going to war, Jehoshaphat insisted they consult God's prophets. 400 court prophets all promised victory, telling Ahab exactly what he wanted to hear. Jehoshaphat pressed for another opinion. Ahab reluctantly mentioned Micaiah, a prophet he admitted he hated for never predicting good things about him. When summoned, Micaiah revealed a horrifying vision, God ordering a spirit to put lies into the mouths of Ahab's prophets to deceive the king. Micaiah warned that the prophet's messages were a deception. Ahab still decided to ignore him, disguised himself in battle, and was struck by a deadly arrow. The lie he wanted to believe led him exactly where God said it would, to his death. The prophet eaten by a lion. In 1 Kings 13, God sent an unnamed prophet from Judah to confront King Jeroboam at Bethel. The king had set up a pagan calf altar, which was a form of idolatry. The prophet executed God's judgment, and as a sign, the altar split apart. When Jeroboam tried to arrest him, his hand withered as punishment, only to be healed when the prophet prayed for him. To test the prophet further, God had commanded him to not eat and drink in the king's land or return by the same road. He obeyed as he set out for home. But an old prophet from Bethel heard what happened and found him resting under a tree. When the younger prophet explained God's instructions, the old man lied, claiming an angel had told him to invite him for a meal. The younger prophet foolishly believed him. While they ate, God spoke through the old man, condemning him for disobedience and declaring he would die before reaching home. On the road, a lion killed him, but did not eat the body or harm the donkey, standing guard beside them in creepy stillness. Hearing the news, the old prophet was desperate. He retrieved the body, buried it in his own tomb, and asked to be buried beside him. The man who deceived him became his mourner. Lot and his daughters. After the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot fled with his 2 daughters and lived in isolation in a mountain cave in Genesis 19:30-38. His wife had already perished, turned into a pillar of salt for looking back. Convinced the world had ended and humanity faced extinction, the daughters devised a desperate plan to preserve their family line. On the first night, the elder daughter got Lot drunk and slept with him while he was unconscious. The next night, the younger daughter did the same. Both became pregnant. The elder daughter's son was named Moab, meaning from father. The younger daughter's son was Ben-Ami, meaning son of my people. These children became the ancestors of the Moabite and Ammonite nations, the future enemies of Israel. The account records no judgment or condemnation, only the events. In the silence, the story leaves us with an unsettling question, whether this was survival, sin, or both. The Circumcision Ambush. When Jacob's family settled near the Canaanite city of Shechem, his daughter Dinah went out to visit the local women. Prince Shechem, son of the city's ruler Hamor, saw her, took her by force, and violated her. Then, in a disturbing twist, he decided he wanted her as his wife. Shechem and Hamor approached Jacob with an offer, generous bride prices, open intermarriage, and full access between their peoples. Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi, seemed to agree, but they were plotting revenge. They demanded that every male in the city be circumcised, claiming they could not give their sister to an uncircumcised man. The prince and the city ruler convinced their people by promising them access to Jacob's wealth. All the men agreed and underwent circumcision. On the 3rd day, when they were in pain and unable to fight, Simeon and Levi attacked, killing every adult male, including Hamor and Shechem, and rescuing their sister. The rest of the brothers looted the city and took captives. In this story in Genesis 34, a sacred covenant had become a weapon for mass slaughter. Jephthah's daughter. Jephthah, the son of a harlot, was cast out by his half-brothers and became a warrior. When the Ammonites threatened Israel, the same elders who had rejected him begged for his help. In Judges 11:30-40, Jephthah made a vow to God before battle. If granted victory, he would offer as a burnt sacrifice whatever came out of his house first to greet him. God gave him a decisive win, but when he returned home, the first to come out was his only child, his daughter, dancing with tambourines. Jephthah tore his clothes in grief, explaining his vow. She accepted her fate, asking only for 2 months to roam the hills with her friends, mourning not her death, but the life she would never live and the children she would never bear. When she returned, Jephthah fulfilled his vow. No angel stopped him, no ram replaced her, no divine voice spoke. The victory that saved Israel cost him his legacy, and heaven said nothing. Elisha and the 2 bears. Right after purifying Jericho's poisoned water, Elisha traveled to Bethel, a city of idol worship and open hostility toward God's prophets. In 2 Kings 2:23-25, a mob of 42 young men came out to confront him. They mocked him, calling him bald head, and telling him to go up, likely ridiculing the prophet Elijah's recent ascension to heaven and daring Elisha to follow. In that culture, mocking a prophet was mocking God himself. Coming from Bethel, where Jeroboam's golden calves stood, the insult was an open rejection of God's authority. Elisha turned, pronounced a curse in the Lord's name, and 2 female bears came out of the forest, mauling 42 of them. Whether they died is unstated, but the violence was severe. The same power that had healed water now brought judgment, a public warning that God's messengers were not to be mocked. Ehud assassinates Eglon. In Judges 3 verse 12-30, Israel was oppressed by King Eglon of Moab and forced to pay heavy tribute for 18 years. To save Israel, God raised up Ehud, a left-handed warrior from the tribe of Benjamin. Ehud volunteered to present the annual tribute. Before leaving, he forged an 18-inch double-edged dagger and strapped it to his right thigh, hidden under his robes. After presenting the tribute, Ehud dismissed his escort and returned alone to Eglon's private upper room. "I have a secret message from God," he said. The king, an extremely large man, sent away his attendants and leaned in to hear. Ehud drew the dagger with his left hand and drove it deep into Eglon's belly. His flesh closed over the blade, swallowing the handle, and his bowels emptied. Immediately after the incident, Ehud locked the doors and escaped through a side passage. By the time the servants discovered the king's body, Ehud had already reached the hills, rallied Israel's army, and struck down Moab, winning freedom for his people. And that wraps up some of the most disturbing stories in the Bible. If this helped you understand the darker side of Scripture, give it a like, subscribe for more breakdowns on Christianity, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's next.